Welcome to Not Aliens, Discovering Our Lost History. There's a new, vast renaissance of knowledge destroying our antiquated theories of human history. Advanced ancient ruins in plain sight. Polygonal, 20, 50, 100, 1,000, 3,000 ton advanced engineered building blocks with similar keystone connections across Earth. Mysterious, ancient, engineered soils all over the Earth. An advanced ancient human civilization was on our planet and fell. Join us as we dig deep and uncover the truth that our history is a search and rescue, not a search and recovery. Hey, welcome everybody.
Hey, how's it going?
We are back. It is Thursday. Boy, what is the date even? Let's timestamp this. It is December 8th.
Yeah.
How are you?
Really good. It's supposed to possibly snow here on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, in the desert. I don't live in Minnesota because I live here because I don't want to shovel snow, and it's supposed to snow. We could get up to a foot of snow here. It'll be gone in 2 days, but yeah.
Wait, but it'll stay on the ground, right?
For about 2 days.
Oh man, I wonder how that. I wonder, will there be even travel on the roads, or will everyone just stay home?
Oh no, there's so many Canadians and Minnesotans and people from Wisconsin here that in the Dakotas, it's a piece of cake.
Yeah, but they got to drive like it's the 70s or 80s. They got to be old enough to know how to drive without salt.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
No, that it will be. No, they say it will. The snow level will probably drop to 4,000 feet. We're at 2,700 here at the house, but they said there's a possibility it could drop down to 2,000 feet. If that happens, then we do have snow.
Well, and people are speculating in Minnesota. For everyone out there, speculating on Minnesota weather is absolutely an impossible task. But they say we're going to get hit with a storm, and I have family and friends all over it. But at the same time, it's like, are you kidding? Even predicting Minnesota weather, if you can't see it coming, it ain't happening.
Well, was it June of 85 or 86 when we ended up with 26 inches of partly cloudy? That's when 494 was closed for 10 days because there was 10 to 15 feet of water on it.
Yep.
And that was a partly cloudy day that we got, over 20 inches of rain. Three storms came together and just sort of stopped and said, no, we like it here. We're just going to sit here and just rain and rain and rain.
We're in for it either way. It's an odd season. It's already pretty cold here. It's 13 degrees, but
it's Minnesota.
I will. Yes. Cause I've been in Utah and it's been much different weather. It snows, but the roads clear immediately. It feels like spring. I think most Minnesotans or anyone from the Midwest knows what that smells like. Even if the temperature is 40, when it's spring, there's this smell and that's what it's like. It's like it's about to all go away, but it doesn't. But it feels, like 70 degrees in your car. And, I guess it's the altitude and everything. But this is not comfortable, Jim. I got back to Minnesota. It's 13 degrees at night, and it is unpleasant.
Well, I looked at, for those who know, I'm going to Minnesota for a week, and I'm leaving next Thursday. And the average high temperature during the day is going to be in the 20s. And the average low temperature is going to be in single digits for the entire week that I'm there.
Yeah.
But at least it's not, I was back there in 2011 for Christmas, and it got down to 18 below. And there was like 3 or 4 days where it was, in the teens below zero. That is cold. When it's like 18 degrees below zero, that's 50 degrees below freezing.
Hey, we broke records. I think it was 4 years ago now. We were at, I think respectively, 32 to 37 actual temp below zero plus wind chill for over a week. We broke every Minnesota record there ever was. And it was definitely a day to throw like this steamy water in the air and watch it turn to fluff. But it was not with wind chill. The actual temperature was, I think, 32 to 37 below zero.
I remember it was January, I think it was the 16th. This is 1978. I think it was 78. It may have been earlier than that. Ridgedale had just opened up. There, and the actual temperature was 31 or 32 below with a 40-mile-an-hour constant wind with gusts to 50, 55 miles an hour. The wind chill factor was minus 100. And I parked my car and I ran into Donaldson's, which doesn't exist anymore. And
oh my gosh,
I was only in there just a few, maybe 10 minutes. Came out, went out in my car, put my key in the ignition, click, 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 click.
Fun time.
Oh God, you don't know cold until you've had to jump a car when the wind chill factor is 100 below zero.
Oh yeah. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Not as good of a time, It's like we've had these opportunities to like travel the last few weeks. We got together. You and I got together. Well, we got together over Thanksgiving, and then I've been, traveling. Just back in Utah, there was I don't know. Again, this great temperature difference between what you're seeing in snow versus the actual air, and then I still can't. I have two things that came up on the radar today, which I figured we'd talk about. One was I got multiple people sending me articles on two things, which was depressing. One was the coup in Peru.
Yeah.
Because I've only talked about it every week that we're ultimately
right. That we were going to be going to Peru and do some digging. Yeah.
Murphy's Law, and
literally, yeah.
And at least it's epically wrong. Like if anything could go wrong, it'd start with a coup. That's a capstone, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really the peak of the pyramid. I mean, if you start with a coup, anything else is
it goes downhill from there. Yeah.
Well, the other thing that we were going to talk about was I got an MSN article about a Mach 10 aircraft, and I'm like, gosh, we've talked about this. How have we not talked about this? And I'm like, looks a little bit. I think I told you I was at Giant Rock. Did I ever tell you I was outside of Joshua Tree for Contact in the Desert?
Uh-huh.
And I was there with a friend of mine. Her and I go out near Big Rock. For everyone out there who's getting mad at me, it's either Giant Rock or Big Rock. And it's a 10-story glacial boulder that actually had a bar dug into it by some exotic, interesting guy in the 50s. And it was a site of a lot of UFO activity in California, not far from Joshua Tree and the meditation center where the Contact in the Desert was till 2018. And I saw the 3 starred triangled formation flying objects that would like jump 50 miles and then jump back and then into formation. At first I thought it was like 3 planes and then lights would go out. And then I thought maybe there were 3 more planes, like maybe they were 20, 30, 50 miles apart. And I thought, it was a different set of planes. But what I was watching was something triangle shaped blink out and then reappear so many miles away and then blink back. And I was watching this. We actually were up. I don't think I've ever told you this, but I don't talk about it too much. It's come up in a couple interviews, but anyway, so these triangle shaped, and again, if they were straight up UFOs, why are they lit? Like, why would you light yourself up?
Yeah.
Let other UFOs know that you're a UFO?
yeah.
Like, they need to know?
Is that your blinker? Is it stuck?
Yeah. So, right, cosmic neighbors, it is seriously Murphy's Law that the coup happened. So I'm sure they'll calm down and figure it out. But those triangle-shaped objects, I'm over Joshua Tree. We're not far from 29 Palms. There's other military bases. And I did I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, but I did I have 7 hours out of my 40 in the air for learning to fly. And so I've been behind the pilot seat. I have flown a little bit. I've always been very interested in aircraft, and pragmatically speaking, I'm watching these triangle shaped objects like jump out of formation. And I'm definitely watching them. Like, we're in the desert, we're by Big Rock or Giant Rock, and we're staring at groups of them for basically, it was like I'm like, how long are we going to look at them? It was like 2.5, 3 hours. And as you're watching them, and they were in groups of 3 or 5, and they're jumping around, and it's like, what are they doing? But then eventually it was like, well, we better get out of the middle of the desert. There's no street lights. It was very difficult to drive around. We were in an all-wheel drive truck. We got out. I didn't really think much of it, other than I thought, well, I would think if they were UFOs, they wouldn't need 3 lights on them. That just didn't seem logical.
Well, the only lights that would seem illogical if they had a red and green one on the tips. If they're the white lights, which is possibly the power source or the propulsion source, that's what Darcy Weir had figured. This is on the TR-3B.
Yeah.
And those are what give the craft propulsion: forward, right, left, pitch, yaw.
Yeah.
And so those are what the white lights are: the nose and on the wingtips. This is on the triangle. But the one anytime someone sees an unknown and has a blinking red light or green light on it, it's not a UFO. I mean, it's not an alien craft. It's man-made.
It never made any sense to me. Why would an alien put identifying FAA lights on it? I mean, are they cosmic rules?
Yeah. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. As far as you're talking about the thing you got on the SR-72, they've been talking about, is there a replacement for the SR-71 forever? I would love to be able to say, yeah, it's real. I have friends on the inside. They say it's real, but I have friends on the inside. A buddy of mine just retired. He retired 5 years ago now, but he was at the top of the food chain. And I asked him, I said, I know you can't tell me what you're working on if it's classified, but is there anything that you're aware of at the Skunk Works that would get me excited? And he said, no, there isn't anything at the Skunk Works that's getting me excited right now. I said, I enjoy what I do, but it's not like a new Blackbird or a new U-2 or a new F-117 or something even more exotic.
Do you think there's a point? Do you think there's a point where they just decide? Do you think maybe there was a threshold where they just didn't want to tell you anymore?
Oh, it's very possible. I mean, it's very, very possible that. But this is a one-on-one at dinner when I asked him, and I'm not asking for anything classified. I'm asking, is there anything that would get me excited? And Steve has always been very, very honest with me, and and he said, "There's no." But then, and then we have the rumblings and rumors of the SR-72. Now it only took the Skunk Works 32 months from signing a contract to first flight on the Blackbird, on the CIA version of the Blackbird, the A-12. I don't think they could do that today, simply because of the bureaucratic red tape, the security. When they developed the Blackbird in the 1959 to 1962 time frame, first of all, the dollar went a lot farther. Two, it was easier to keep things classified because you had a majority of the Americans were very proud of their country, very patriotic. I think a lot of that has disappeared, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And they had a level of honor. I guess that's probably the best way to describe it. To be able to do what they do and not tell anybody. I mean, there's guys that I've met, and I've also met their wives at Blackbird reunions and whatever. And he said, so and so was, worked on the A-12, for example, or the D-21 program. And he said he was gone 6 or 7 weeks at a time, and I had absolutely no idea what he was doing.
Oh, wow.
I know he was at work. I know he was in the middle of nowhere, but I have no idea what he did for his 28, 31, 50 years at the Skunk Works. And I said, well, that thing right behind my head, That would be a good start. But I don't think they could develop something that quickly, even with pushing everything to its limit, unless China or Russia, and I don't think Russia is a threat at all. China, yes, but China is in deep kimchi right now. Of course, that's a Korean term, but it's the Apple is looking to move iPhone production out of China,
Oh yeah.
which will have a major effect on them. Their
Oh yeah.
exports are down 40% from China. China, we are China's biggest trading partner. If they were to do something, if they were to do something that was detrimental to that relationship, that would be all but kill the Chinese economy. I mean, they would really just go toes up. I mean, there's nothing they could do if they didn't have our market, and if we decided. And thank God, I think some people are talking about it. They just opened up a new chip manufacturing facility here in Arizona.
They did.
Part of the Taiwan group that have they do a lot of chip manufacturing in Taiwan, but they now have 2 U.S. based facilities, and I know one of them's here. I think it's in the greater Phoenix area.
Yeah, there would be no reason. When I found out, I honestly was disbelief. And I was for everyone who doesn't know, I was a network administrator in times past. I spent 10 years in technology, and
we won't hold that against you.
I know, right? At least it was private, not government.
Yeah.
So I learned, and I also learned, in my age group, we learned to program when we were in school. We didn't learn how to use apps. There weren't apps. There was languages, and we learned programming languages. And then later, when you keep that mindset, when I did become a network administrator, I did learn Cisco. I did learn network administration on the command line, how the packets and how information is broken down. More of the cryptology makes more sense to me, along with how you create security and data sets. I date myself. I will admit that I was also an NT administrator in NT when Windows was still promoting and developing NT. I did all that, and it's just another lifetime. However, I was blown away at the concept that all of our chip manufacturing was just in Taiwan. I'm like, that's a joke. It can't possibly be true. And then when I looked into it, I'm like, oh gosh, are we in trouble if the entire world's chip manufacturing facilities is in one location? It just how did that get concentrated?
I mean, that's as stupid as they get.
It really is. If that one country had a different political mindset, we would be in a lot of trouble, because obviously every chip can be marked or looked at however we want. Oh, there we go, Cosmic Neighbors. Yes. All right. So apparently, Cosmic Neighbors is familiar with Windows NT. Yeah, I know. I still have, for everyone who cares, I have the actual starter disk, server disk. If you have an old NT network, chances are I could still help you troubleshoot it, just so you know.
I work for a company called Nortronics. They're out of Golden Valley. They were instrumental in magnetic head technology. They worked with Bill Lear, Leonard Kronfeld, and I can't remember who from Motorola, and they actually created and designed the 4-track and then the 8-track cassette.
Really?
Radio. I mean, tape player for cars.
They did that in Minnesota?
Yeah.
Go figure.
We developed all the streaming heads for Storage Tech. They were out of Colorado Springs. I had IBM down in Rochester. We were developing double-sided 5.25-inch disk drives. They were 96 TPI. and that is so ancient. But the thing about it, I can remember I was at Control Data, which doesn't exist anymore. and they
Have friends there.
were this was in the Bloomington facility, right near the Radisson,
Yep.
and it was magnetic. It was MPI, micro professionals, Inc. And I was in there, and they had what they called their Centurion project. It was a disk drive the size of a commercial grade refrigerator. So it's
Conveniently sized.
it's like 40 inches by 40 inches by about 6 feet tall. It cost $1 million. This is 1978 or 79. And this thing had 14-inch platters. This is a hard drive. I don't think it had more than 20 meg. It wasn't even gigabyte level.
Oh my gosh, $1 million.
And they just canceled it when I was in there. And I was at Texas Peripheral when they were doing with bubble memory, and I was just bringing in some new equipment for their lab. And they announced over the PA system, effective immediately, bubble memory program has been canceled. When you talk about some long faces. And they were bringing in, there were semis bringing in equipment to manufacture bubble memory. But
honestly, I jumped in when they were still 5.5-inch floppies. What's bubble memory?
Bubble memory is what optical discs ended up doing in CD-ROM, DVD.
All right.
And now that, now if you go out and get a new computer today, if I go get another new Mac, it's not going to have a disk drive in there. It'll have an SD card.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I know. It blows my mind that I have a solid state hard drive.
Yeah.
And no disks, no way to burn anything, no way to, it's all. This is how, literally, this is, I think, how if we ever end up in an apocalypse, eventually you stare at a brick and you think it's a brick. You don't look at a polygonal wall or a pyramid or anything and go, that's high technology. It's a rock.
Yeah.
And that's all we're going to have left are like, flash drives and things that are going to look more like furniture in the future or tattoos on a human body. And thank you, Offworld. Apparently, I'm looking extra kg today. So thank you. Extra Nick kg today.
Oh, okay.
So that's apparently.
Was that kg or gamey?
So do you remember Seagate?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're still of course blowing away in Minnesota. The just to kick this can down the road once and for all. So I usually ignore it. It's wonderful. I get lots of great research from fans and from researchers out there. They'll send me some info. In this case, I got that email today, a few about, is there a Mach 10 plane out there?
Well,
we didn't really. You said there was nothing like that in production based on your inside contacts.
As of about 5 years ago.
All right.
But I also believe, even though he was a number 3 guy there may have been some stuff he wasn't privy to. He was. I won't give his name. You can probably figure it out who it is. But he was the director of strategic and unmanned systems at the Skunk Works. So he would have been aware of something if it had been. And what leads me down the same road is in 1982 or 83 at the Prom Center in St. Paul, there in University Avenue. It was February of, I think it was 83. Kelly Johnson, the founder of the Lockheed Skunk Works, was their keynote speaker.
Yeah.
And he got up there talking about the Blackbird and the U-2. He was irritated because he couldn't talk about the little unmanned Blackbird, which is the D-21 drone. He was complaining that there's a toy company out in San Diego, which was Testers, and he was referring to my friend John Andrews. And then he said, and there's some smart aleck aviation guy out here somewhere in the Midwest who's talked about it and written about it, and I can't even say the name, and he was referring to me. So there was, and this was the military avionics division at Honeywell, who, and they developed the autopilot, the inlet control system, the stabilization augmentation system for the Blackbirds, plus stuff for the D-21, the F-117, the F-22, F-35 down the road. So Kelly Johnson gets up there and he's talking about speed. He said, "Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go?" He said, "Right now we're flying a Mach 3.2 any day of the week." He said, "Piece of cake going to Mach 4. We have the capabilities today to have a manned air-breathing platform fly at Mach 4, Mach 6, Mach 8, Mach 12, Mach 16. We have the technology today." It's 1983.
Right.
That's 40 years ago, boys and girls. And he said, "Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go?" It's like drag racing. Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go? If you pour enough money into anything, you can get it to go fast or go high.
Hey, what about the economy, Jim? Just kidding.
That would stimulate the economy. And the thing about it, ramjets would be involved. This is off-world Adam. The D-21, which was the unmanned Blackbird that was launched initially off of the top of a M21 Blackbird, and they only had two of those. There's only one survivor, and that's at the CMA flight in Seattle. I've sat in it multiple times. The D-21 drone is ramjet-powered craft, and it flew about Mach 3.5, just under 100,000 feet. And it was designed specifically to fly over denied airspace when we were not allowed to have manned overflights. When Francis Gary Powers was shot down on May 1st, 1960, in a U-2 over the former Soviet Union, he was captured. And part of the terms and conditions of his release, there was a prisoner swap, much like we had today with that. With that thing.
Hey, we're on YouTube.
I won't say. And it just.
Yeah. So the prisoner exchange, similarly.
Yeah, but part of the terms and conditions of Francis Gary Powers' release was a cessation of all manned overflights over the Soviet Union and its allies. So that they put together with Bob Murphy was in charge of it. Kelly Johnson gave him a small little drawing. He had worked with Marquardt on the X7 program, which was a ramjet technology demonstrator, and they had multiple launches on the X7. So Kelly was real familiar with what ramjets could do. They're very simple, and they were right there at Van Nuys, and they had U-2 operations maintenance facilities at Van Nuys, and Kelly was very familiar with all the aerospace companies and suppliers in the area, so it was a logical choice. But that did fly at Mach 3.5 up to 100,000 feet, but the terms and conditions were the cessation of all manned overflights over the former Soviet Union and its allies. But they put that together in about 2.5 years, which is really, that's what the Skunk Works is famous for. What they did with the Blackbird would have taken any other aerospace company 10 or 15 years to get the talent and to get the ability to build a Mach 3.2 airplane.
What, as far as the references for Top Gun, what was the point of, is it that everyone's excited because of the movie that this is coming up again, or is it some other reason?
Basically Top Gun did what it did back when it first came out, and back in the 80s. It blew everything away. It was pure patriotic entertainment. It wasn't a rehash of some comic book character, or this is the seventh or eighth iteration of a pretend character. this was based on Top Gun, which is an actual event. They fly them out of Fallon, outside of Reno. They used to be out of Miramar in San Diego, but the encroachment, encroachment, pushed them away.
Yeah.
But they still have the Osprey there at Miramar, and they still have F-18 there at Miramar with the Marine Corps. Why they didn't move Top Gun to 29 Palms? But they have a huge part of Nevada that they can use for low altitude, high speed tracks, or
It's hard to talk and read at the same time, isn't it?
yeah, and there's about 20 or 30 things going off in my head at the same time,
Right.
and we can't supercharge ramjets or turbojets. You have to you do a scramjet, which is a supersonic combustion ramjet. Those are always tricky. They have flown a few of them up to Mach 5. They're trying to fly sustained Mach 10 in an unmanned drone or reentry vehicle or craft.
Yeah.
But
it's the technology, like you said. If they're 40 years ago, they're talking about what they had. And again, you're seeing unidentified aircraft and they have lights on them. They're likely not alien, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, time and money. At what point are we not on the moon because we really can go Mach 20? Is that it?
We may have been told not to come back to the moon by its current occupants.
Well, there's a question.
Neil Armstrong, his son, indicated that he told his son that when he was on the moon, there were aliens looking at him. They had equipment that was far superior to ours, and they were very big. But he said they were right there. There was, they knew, they followed us on everything they did, and all of them have indicated a firm belief in UFOs and off-world humanoids. I mean, they asked Story Musgrave when he was servicing the Hubble. He was up there for 5.5 hours, and said, "What were you doing when you weren't hands-on on the Hubble?" He says, "I was looking for UFOs."
Right.
And he was serious.
Yeah. If you got the time, and and a lot of what, we were just talking about this earlier, actually, Hollis. The Peruvian government is going through some upheavals currently. Uh-huh. There was a coup announced, so I have talked about the Paracas people in the past, and they, like what Jim's talking about right now, you got somebody with a really powerful telescope. There's this assumption that, these elongated skull people in Peru that are naturally preserved. A lot of people don't get reminded this, but the Paracas can be as old as 9,000. Some of the mummies are over 9,000 years old, and they're preserved because of the Peruvian climate. So the question is you have a group of people that are literally, some of these people are basically, living right up against the biblical flood time in the Peruvian area. But then prior to the biblical flood and deeper into human antiquity is an object like a technology like the Hubble, able to photograph satellites, as in moons, meteors, asteroids, things that we think are natural floating through the solar system or
cosmos.
Planet. Yeah, I mean, you and I touched on this. I mean, what is the chances that there's ancient archaeological finds on Mars or ancient archaeology? And I am going to squash something. We're going to bring this up as a public service announcement to people about just Jim together. It'll be a duet. I don't want to be mean during the holidays, but as a technological Grinch, I really want to ask everyone listening before I pose it to Jim and ask him to answer. Does everyone out there really think that NASA would allow a live feed from any satellite or the moon or a Land Rover or anything on Mars? Does anyone actually think about it? Why would they allow a live feed
They wouldn't.
before? Right. But I get people, I've done definitely a bunch of interviews, and you got people passionately looking through the allowed photography. But, you find a mound that looks suspicious and they let some of the stuff through, or it's heavily redacted. We're not seeing any live feeds, folks.
One thing there was today on the news, or maybe someone forwarded it, but it was from Mars. It's the most current craft that's on the ground there.
Yeah.
They had shot something. It said it looked like a log, and you could see the end, and there were growth rings. I mean, there was some speculation that as recently as 10 or 20,000 years ago, there was an atmosphere on Mars. I mean, not a million years ago, but we're talking about in fairly recent times. And I can't imagine what would cause the atmosphere to be blown away, unless there was something incredibly catastrophic that happened that could happen to Earth.
Right. And that's the question: is it natural, or is it a war, a natural disaster, or is it, again, some sort of horrible scalar technology, weapon systems that we don't understand? And again, is it a single human race, or is it a human race that chose to deviate based on genetic customizations? We have a lot of gene CRISPRs and things we can use to make custom babies right now, and we think the world's polite, and that they would they either become superhuman like Superman, or super evil like whatever. Pick a bad guy in any Marvel, DC, whatever. And then if it's not that direction, then it's, the only thing we could be doing is deciding that my child will have blonde hair, blue eyes, and play the piano.
And an IQ of 170.
Right. Yeah. And, it's never, again, a translucent body that reads infrared waves and frequencies and could fly on a technologically integrated ship that can do Mach 22 at 0.0 turns. They're not thinking that a human being would fully integrate beyond superficially in tattoos their body into a machine. It's so funny. There's this jump in mindset between, oh man, did you know the weapon systems on an F-22 can, they're using mind control. They're using, well, there's a reason the human skin can see infrared. It knows how to translate it. We don't consciously know what to do with it anymore, but are we really, one of the things I speculate and talk on is, are our biological systems, as simple as our skin, part of prior technology, just like the massive chunks of disk, and we have no disk drives? I mean, are we divorced biologically, biotechnically from more advanced technology? And we look at the Hubble and we look at these ruins, and we're looking for things that we understand as biological or technical, but we could be looking at a giant biological brick or a moon, and in reality it really is a functioning
a life form of some sort.
Some artificial intelligence, or an object that was programmed to do exactly what it is. Or I don't know. That's one of my fascinations is Eric Von Daniken, and I may or may not have mentioned this to you. I met with him a couple of times, and he talked to me about everyone. I had, at the time I was writing my book, this is a few years ago, about 4 years ago, and I had learned about the Black Knight satellite. And I should ask you a question about that in a second, but my comment is just that when I met with Von Daniken, he got into it with me about, not into it as in we were arguing, he was just commenting. He goes, forget about the Black Knight. I know of at least 6 other satellites in orbit, high orbit around around the Earth that are ancient. And so you got to wonder, of all the things that when you're looking for alien life, it's like, well, why don't we start with our own satellites? And on that note, side question, I've never asked you this. Do you know anything about the Black Knight satellite, in your
No,
opinion? Never come
no.
up with do you know anyone, by the way, for as much as you know about Skunk Works, do you know anyone who got into Phantom? Anybody who got into, like, is there a big of a Jim Goodall in the Phantom world, in Phantom Works?
Oh, well, yeah. Eric Simonson was the HR guy, or he was the public relations guy at McDonnell Douglas for years.
Yeah. I mean, Aaron's making a good point, but no, I'd keep
Yeah.
yeah, but as far as Skunk Works goes and Phantom, is there
Yeah.
someone we should be talking to?
Eric, because of what Eric did, he probably will not talk.
Oh,
He's very security conscious, and I'm trying to think of anybody else that I know that had a long history with McDonnell Douglas. What's now Boeing, but I
they
can't.
never really.
Other than Eric, he's the only person I know that would know. But again, he is someone that would not he would not violate his security, and I don't.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want anyone to do that either.
Yeah.
That's not necessary. I think that it's more important for us to collectively, find common ground that doesn't compromise actual security.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is a lot of our history that just seems to be buried under academic hubris and embarrassment of getting it so wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. It's such an interesting space to be in. The one thing about sports I always liked as a kid growing up, I played soccer. Yes, and I know the World Cup's on right now. So I played football for 6 years in a state that's very football/soccer oriented, and hockey and actual football. But
That would be Minnesota.
yes, it would. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the biggest values that doesn't seem to translate well in academia is losing. And when you play sports, you lose. You don't always win.
Yeah.
And you can have individually great moments, but you can lose as a team. And somehow that does not get taught in academia, where you develop this sense that you can never lose, you can never be wrong. And it creates this incredibly stagnating academic hubris.
It's how you grow.
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
got to make mistakes.
the old saying is, how does a turtle move? First, he sticks his neck out. And that's what you have to do. So if you want to go forward, that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You have to take the risk.
And I don't think it's as smart as people saying, well, you have Edison's example. It's like, didn't you fail at making a light bulb over 2,000 times? He goes, no, I just figured out 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb. But I don't think it's as simple as far as you try until you succeed. I think very much embrace. I think one of the things missing in that analysis for, I think, a lot of people, or they skip over it, is that each one of those failures hurts a lot. I think that's actually smoothed over to the point where you get these people who are like, oh, I've been teaching literally the wrong thing, and it's on such an obvious point. I am embarrassed. And instead of just, picking yourself up and dusting yourself off, they quadruple down, they double down, they deflect. And we end up with a very skewed history.
Yeah.
It's just, sorry, speaking of the choir.
Yeah.
Speaking of the choir,
Yeah.
I don't, yeah. Anyway.
No, there's, as far as technology that is out, off planet, when they're done with it, and I don't know if I mentioned it here, but down in Chile, they are putting together, and it was supposed to be done in 2022, but because of COVID, it's like 3 years late. but they're in the process of building the giant Magellan telescope.
Oh yeah.
That will be, it's at 16,000 feet in altitude, which means it'll have, turbulent free air. It's 200 miles from the nearest city, so you're not going to have problems with light pollution. When I was up at Kitt Peak National Observatories, you can see the lights from Phoenix from my backyard, and I'm 95 miles away.
Yeah.
And light pollution, as far as astronomers go, are something really critical. So that's why many of the big telescopes have moved away from the U.S. mainland and Hawaii, and have moved to South America, to the Andes, primarily because it's still real rural, and there's very little built around there, and they could use the resources coming in. I mean, you have a construction project that big, you're going to employ a lot of local people and whatever, so they're real happy about it. But the giant Magellan telescope are using 7 mirrors that are made here at the University of Arizona at the Mirror Lab, and they're 27 foot in diameter, and they're going to have 7 of them, and they're all going to be focused onto one secondary mirror. And they say by the time they get first light, that's when the first light hits the receptors, and they say, we got to fight on this date at this time. I mean, it's a big celebration. They figure they'll be able to see back within 100,000 years of first light in the universe, and they're not sure what they're not sure what they're going to find, because the deeper they look and the more precision and focus the sensors are looking for life, looking for whatever, the more they find, the more they don't know.
Yeah, well, there's a shock. I think the competition shouldn't be on what you learn. It should be about what we don't know. That would be a more accurate.
But they don't teach thinking anymore.
Oh, no. Wisdom's out there. You're not, well, it's publicly stated. Michael Cremo in Forbidden Archaeology talks about the Rockefeller's Foundation research wing on during the Industrial Revolution. If you want people to repetitively work in a factory environment, you need to create people who have a mindset around that being a good use of their time, and to create a motivated workforce. There's a mindset involved in that. And this isn't even a conspiracy. You can just look at publicly stated papers by what they're researching for. And it's like, you literally are telling us, I mean, it's not even diabolical. It's just right there. And the sheep just go to the pen.
What really upset me, I spent most of my sophomore and junior year in the Dean of Boys' office. So I was what they call today would be called a spirited youth. Back then I was just that troublemaking juvenile delinquent Jimmy Goodall. But today's kids don't know how to think. My son was born in '76, so he's a bicentennial baby, and all his friends were all born in '76. Has nothing to do with whatever, but they were all in 7th grade, and my son had 4 or 5 of his friends over at the house, and there was something on the news, and they said, I asked them, I said, can any of you I mean, these are all good grades.
You told me this. Yeah.
Yeah. Are any of you can name the original 13 colonies? I mean, you talk about a blank stare. I said, how about any one of them? Nothing. I said, have you ever heard of LaSalle, Ponce de Leon, Magellan, Sir Francis Drake, Lewis and Clark? And one guy said, isn't that a British grok group from the 60s? I said, no, you're half right. It's the Dave Clark 5. So I called the director of curriculum at Eden Prairie. This is Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And Eden Prairie is known to have a great school system.
Very good. That's what's said even to this day.
Now we're going 45, 50 years ago. And the director of curriculum, no, it wasn't 45 years ago, it had to be 30 years ago. The director of curriculum had a PhD from Berkeley, graduated in 68. So, so I know what her political leanings were. And I went in there and I said, I have a real problem with you not teaching U.S. history. So, well, history is not important. I said, what? I said, when every country in the world is telling their population and their their future leaders what a great country there is, and you're saying we're not, or to say that America is the greatest place on earth would make everybody else look second rate. I said, that's why we have 10 or 11 million people trying to sneak through our border every year. She didn't like that. And,
No.
And then I kept calling her sweetheart, which you could just see her jaws just tightening up. And
Berkeley.
he said, history is not important. So we touch on it a little in 11th grade. I said, I started learning about the colonies and everything else in 2nd or 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And all the way through. I mean, I have a pretty good understanding. It may be a white man's understanding of U.S. history, but it's still an understanding of history that's been taught.
Even when I was young, I did not understand how Christopher Columbus, on that note though, I mean, young, forget being woke. I was like, this guy never came to America. Why the hell are we celebrating this? The guy never hit land here.
Or
he was in the Caribbean.
He hit the Caribbean, but...
Yeah, but the guy never came here and he thought he was in India. Why are we having a Columbus Day? Like, I just didn't get that. I was a nerd. I liked history. I grew up with history. But yeah, that one, anyway. So
now this person's a Republican. He's very famous. He was assassinated, and he is the only person that has a holiday in his name. It's Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Why? Yeah, and they got rid of Lincoln in Washington and just called it President's Day. Now, I admire Dr. King, and of course I've always been a big fan of our founding fathers and Abraham Lincoln and such. But today's youth have no idea.
No.
And what are they using SETI for? This is Off-World Adam. I don't know. To warm their coffee. I've been to the very large array in Socorro. It's an interesting place. I mean, electronically, it's a dead area. I mean, you can't pick up any signals in there unless they want you to. But they've been looking, and I think eventually they'll find something. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it on our program, but when I was with the Kit Peak National Observatories, when I was a docent, we had just before I left, we had a gathering of all the astronomers, technicians, and docents. It was beer and pizza. I don't know if it was beer or not, but it was drinks and pizza at the University of Arizona, where the headquarters is. And he got up there and he started talking about the fact that he had just returned from a conference of all the astronomers in the world that were looking for exoplanets. And they, based on proven mathematical formulas, they came to the conclusion that for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets. And out of that incredible number of planets, they figure, again, based on proven mathematical formulas, that they calculate there is approximately 2 billion, that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar-sized brown dwarf star in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. And to quote Jodie Foster's character in the movie Contact, if we're the only ones, what a waste of space. And we're not.
All right.
And we're not the only ones. We did, out of the trillions upon trillions of planets and planetoids out in this incredible universe, and there may be more than one universe. We don't know that. And maybe when the Giant Magellan Telescope is fully operational, they'll look out there as far as they can see, and they'll say, they'll see a for sale sign, vacant, build to suit.
This galaxy for sale.
Yeah,
Forget planet. It's
yeah.
like
No, it's
there's
a
whole town.
universe for sale. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, how about that? It's like this dimension now empty or foreclosed, or there's no reason we wouldn't have. It wouldn't just be a single planet. You could see whole like by your wing of the Kepler belt, or
Yeah.
it,
Or I just gave my girlfriend one of the rings around Saturn.
right, just one, because the other ones are my exes. I don't know.
Yeah. But they say within the next million years or so, all the rings
Right.
will disappear from Saturn. So enjoy it
Oh,
while you
really?
can, boys and girls.
Well, and the other thing, for Off-World Adam, for SETI, I get I have some deep divers that go down the super conspiracy wing, which again, I hate that the word's misused, and it says it's a detractor, but it isn't. I do think that there is some, speculation that all observatories, or at least some, like Lucifer, and which is quite the acronym,
Yeah.
but there is some speculation that it has to do with the Holy Roman Church, and then you have different government organizations, and whatever you can say about what's publicly known about telescoping, there is this other side that says it has to do with good and evil, and it has to do with the Catholic Church and Luciferian stuff. And I can't tell you that that's not a rabbit hole I've gone down.
Yeah, me either.
And again, I will say this: my interest in dynastic civilizations and their legends and stories and myths, they're all super fascinating. The problem is that we have, just like the thumbnail, that although I was going to share it again, but Jim and I started the show. There is, and I don't think Jim's seen it, but it's a spot in Peru, currently under the coup. I did a thumbnail that is a very interesting, very well manufactured looking door that is from the Peruvian, period, that of what should have been just Incas and Aztecs and that sort, but it's not. It's way more ancient and advanced, and it predates the flood, and it predates human history as we know it, just like the Hindu Vedas discuss. And the reality is that we have hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, maybe millions of years of human history that are not recorded. So when people talk legends and myths and stories in this dynastic period, it's like, again, they're all fascinating, but there is a lot of chat about the telescopes have something to do with the real Christian faith or the real Luciferian stuff. And it's like, again, I just warn you that anything you're kind of diving into that is in this dynastic period of the last 6,000 years, and particularly in the West, they're just something to keep in mind, that different belief systems or theories, they all have a sliver of a truth, because there's always something about each of them that there's some very factual things in all of them. And it's not, oh, there's a single idea and there's just a different twist on it. And I challenge everyone in trying to find your wisdom, consider that, especially when they start throwing the words like Lucifer around, and me being a hypersensitive Catholic-ish person, grew up by birth.
Catholic-ish?
Yeah, well, when you're born Catholic, you're Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Whether you want to be or not, right? It's like, look, you're welcome. We make a Victorian Christmas better. I mean, where would Christmas be without,
When for years my mom kept saying, when I'm gonna become a grandmother? Yes, said, for all I know, you already are. And she said,
you're right. Yeah.
And she would just, Jamie, that's not right. That's not the nice thing to say. And I said, well, it could be true, but I've never been nailed with anything. So I was 27 when I finally got married the first time, and my mom and dad are, we're in Richfield, Minnesota. My first wife went to Richfield High School.
Yeah.
And my parents came in from Cincinnati. Dad was director of engineering at Procter & Gamble. And the first thing is, my mom walked in the door, because my brother went to pick him up. I said, hey, Mom, guess what? I'm not a Catholic anymore. And I thought
Oh yeah.
my sweet little mother-in-law to be was going to have a heart attack. Said, "You don't tell your Sicilian mother that you're not Catholic." I said, "Yeah, I did. She didn't care what I was as long as I was getting married."
Right. Yeah.
And she lived long enough to see her only grandson, which is it breaks my heart sometimes, but she did live
Yeah.
long enough to see him. She came down with pancreatic cancer, and
Yeah.
that I don't put on anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's pretty rough.
yeah,
There's I mean, hell, in the last week we lost Christy Alley.
yeah.
I mean, it's such a weird world. There's I never thought that I never watched Cheers. Not wasn't my thing
I think
entirely.
I think I saw every episode.
Well, you were in I think Jim, for anyone who doesn't know, Jim lived Cheers.
Yeah,
And he played more than one character.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I played them all. Yeah, no,
I
I
think
was, yeah. No, my Cheers was, it doesn't exist anymore. It's there off of Normandale, just south of 494, and it was called Stone Wings.
Oh, I have
And
not heard this, but we're gonna have to talk about that one offline
yeah,
before I lose us on. I think these satellites. If you know anyone that is still working with them, we should have a chat about seeing if we can get some telescope time.
well, right now the Kit Peak's off limits still. I went and checked on it just before you came here before Thanksgiving to see if we can go up there, and the road is still closed. Kit Peak is 50 miles due west of downtown Tucson. It's in the Tonahanna Otham Indian Reservation, Indian Nation, and it's at Kit Peak. And Kit Peak is just under 7,000 feet. And the first telescope was brought up there in they started building the site in 1970, and I think first light was it was September '72, and that's the 4 meter, which is 13 feet. The primary mirror is 13 feet across and weighs 15 tons.
Wow.
It was made by Corning out of New York and then brought down by train. And when they came up the back road, it is an 18% grade. And they had 3 big bulldozers up front, one in the back, and they went up from 1,000 feet to 7,000 feet. I mean, and there was no turns. It was all going like this. And if they'd lost their brakes or whatever, there's a couple $1 million worth of broken glass down at the bottom of the hill.
The yeah, the engineering behind that, they found a big chunk of glass that's always been a mystery that is ancient, and it's a few tons and it's really thick, and everyone was wondering if it was just formed over multiple pores or not. That was in Israel. But I wonder, when you're building these lenses, the process to pour them or to create the right convex, what happens when we lose that technology?
Yeah, and the way they make the big mirrors, and I think the only place in the U.S. that makes large mirrors for telescopes, because there can't be, you can't have multiple sources of these mirrors.
No.
Because they take years to make. But what they do, they buy a special quartz from Japan, and they're used about the size of cantaloupes, and they actually hand lay them. They put down hexagonal cones that reduce the overall weight of the mirror. Now the Mayall mirror, being 3 meters, the ones that we're making now at the Mirror Lab are twice that size, but they weigh half as much because they have they made a honeycomb back to the mirror. But what they do, they actually lay it all down. They put them in this gigantic rotating oven. They heat it up to about 2,150 degrees for 6 or 7 days, and they start spinning it at about 4 RPM. And then they, near the end of the melt period, they'll, I think, bring it up to 6 RPM, and that gives it a very mild concave.
Concave.
It's a pure concave shape to it, and it reduces the grinding time dramatically. Now, what they grind it stuff with is this thing right here. This is a diamond dust encrusted panel, and they have a whole series of these on these rotating discs. And of course, there's water on it, and when they're finally done, they actually use a laser to go through and scan the entire 27-foot diameter mirror to make sure that there are no imperfections, and if there are, to identify them, and then
Wow.
you can buff them out. I mean, we're talking about within a millionth of an inch on the surfaces, and then when they're ready to make a mirrored surface, it goes into a vacuum chamber. They use about this. No, I don't know if you can see it. It's a paper clip.
All right.
And they use that much aluminum, and they heat it up to a couple thousand degrees in a vacuum, and it adheres to the surface of the mirror, and it's about 3 to 4 atoms thick, and that's all it is. And they typically use aluminum. They have used gold on some of them, but the aluminum seems to work pretty good.
Yeah.
And they have to resurface them, every 5 to 8 years, depending on oxidation and where they're at and how they've been maintained.
Oh, that's fascinating. I actually had no idea. That's exactly the kind of techniques and things over a large, not just convex surface, but these are the kind of technologies I think that are missing on the surfaces of polygonal constructions. I think our past was filled with layers of again, the mind around, hey, we have to buff this out. We have to take out the imperfections. We have to take out the cloudiness or oxidation or something that's going on with it being a giant lens.
Uh-huh.
That kind of maintenance, those are, again, it's one thing to go, well, we want to build a big lens to look in space and make a giant telescope, but maintenance and care, I don't think factors into people's immediate idea that machines and technology like this needs constant, maintenance like a baby.
Yeah, the technology involved in these telescopes is something else. Now the Naval 4 meter, and that's a 13-foot primary mirror. That's what 4 meters equals to. The telescope and its mount, it's a horseshoe mount. It is positioned with a 1/4 horsepower motor. You can go up there and grab hold of it, and you can move this entire 200,000 pound or 200,000 pound or 200,000 ton fixture. You can move it with your hands. It's that well balanced, and it's on a
Wow.
It's on 3 bearings, and it's just everything about it is fascinating. And I love machines, and that's one of the reasons I went there to volunteer my time. And
Yeah.
by the way, speak about you see my finger.
How's it doing?
Well, I can bend it,
Oh,
but
God.
it still hurts.
I bet,
still-
man. For those that don't know, we did a little work under Jim's front hood of his Corvette. I blame GM completely for their under-engineered, underwhelming hydraulic hood lift. But we were putting in a couple bits, and the car decided to eat Jim's hand.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it came slamming down and latched,
Yep.
and I couldn't pull it out.
Nope. He literally just looked at me and said, "Hurry."
Yeah.
And I hurried. as fast as I could learn how to open the hood of a Corvette.
Yeah.
That was slightly tricky, but it must have felt like a million minutes till I got it open.
Yep. Yeah.
And his poor fingers. You had two in there though, right?
Yeah, but it only really crushed one, and it's the most important one too.
Yeah, well, it's one it has language skills involved, and
Absolutely, and primarily sign language skills more than anything.
yeah, it really was. Yeah, it was quite terrible because I think he messed with the cartilage a little bit. I mean, as a
Oh,
climber,
yeah.
you mess up fingers like that, and
I
it's
mean, it closes all the way. It closes all the way. So
yeah. But yeah. So we went and we successfully fixed the vehicle. However, not at the expense of uh, Jim having to communicate with his hand held up and iced for the next day and a
yeah,
half.
yeah, and some profanity was involved. I know you probably find that surprising, but
Shocking for
yeah,
everyone.
yeah, yeah.
It was pretty brutal, but I'm assuming it hasn't, they're still clicked in place and your
Oh yeah,
fender's looking right, right?
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. And
Well,
why they would do something so cheesy?
I know. That makes no sense. They could have made it out of a stronger carbon fiber. Speaking of material sciences, it
Yeah,
could be, it's basically a plastic part, and it could easily have been uh,
it could have been
uh,
reinforced differently.
yeah, it was pretty, it was pretty off world. It's getting funny. Uh, yeah, that's accurate. Expert cab hailer. I guess you can signal to everyone, at least in Italy.
Yeah,
Uh, you get the two fingers, but yeah, that it's good to hear because it's been what 2 weeks.
yeah.
Man, we're coming right out of it. That's still it's good to hear that part isn't so chintzy that it. I was afraid you were going to go over one speed bump and it was just going to break again.
Oh, I'd be really pissed if that happened.
Oh God, so would I.
Yeah,
Uh, they and the fact that it, like I said, the parts guy said it's a real common break. Happens quite a bit.
and the when I went to the body shop guy, and this is at Watson Chevrolet, he said, "Well, you hit something, that's why it break." And that lying sob, I'm very tempted to go and just challenge him and said you caused a tremendous amount of bad feelings towards Watson Chevrolet, and I will never bring a car into your body shop because of that. And I'm going to tell the general manager that someday.
Yeah.
So I'm not a big customer. I just I have my Corvette. That's my last car,
Yeah.
and I absolutely love it. I have 88,000 miles on it now.
You drive it everywhere. I mean, you've been out to the California to where? Well, how far east have you driven it?
Dayton, Ohio, Little Rock, down to Dallas. I did the Great Circle trip. I went from here to Albuquerque to Denver to Sturgis to Minneapolis and then to
Wow.
Dayton, Ohio, Little Rock. Actually, I went to Memphis, Little Rock, San Antonio, and then
Well, you're not giving this one up, right? You keeping it?
oh yeah, no, they're gonna bury me in it. I don't know if they'll allow it at Fort Snelling to be buried with your car, but
I should I should be more productive with our time right now. But do you remember Jack Palance when he did That's Incredible and hosted it, and the guy that got buried in his car?
yeah, yeah, that was a
Yeah.
long time. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I haven't forgotten that one.
Yeah, have gun will travel too. Huh?
Oh, that was great.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, how's your latest book doing, by the way, before we get too far
Okay,
down the,
I am. I'm work. Book 29 is at my publisher, which is Osprey. They're out of the UK. That is Nautilus to Columbia class. It's the one right in the middle, right there. And
Yep.
that's about 330 pages. I cover all 227 plus nuclear powered submarines of the United States Navy. And what I have, and that's book 29. Now, book 28 goes with the two submarine books behind me. This is volume one, Los Angeles class. This is volume two, which is Virginia class. And in volume three, I already have most of it done, but I'm waiting to get on one of the arsenal boats, the SSGNs.
Okay.
And that's all I need to finish the book up. And it'll be a full color, probably close to 200 pages, and I cover a C4 boat inside and out, a D5 boat inside and out, and a arsenal boat inside and out. So, and I had some guys who, a bunch of bubbleheads, as they call them, submarine guys, said, "How in the heck did you get on the Seawolf class boat with a camera?" I said, "I asked, and it only took me 7.5 years to get on one." He says, "I didn't think they would have let anybody in there with a camera."
And you got on. It took 7 years though.
7.5, yeah.
Why did it take so long?
There's only three of them, and you can't get on the Jimmy Carter because that is a spook boat that replaced the Parchie. They put a 100-foot extension behind the sail, and they can actually bring undersea cables inside the submarine to attach things to them.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and it's a 435 foot long submarine. The Seawolf boat, they call submarines boats. If you're on the surface, they call it a ship. If it's below the surface, it's a boat. So,
Okay.
but the Seawolf and the Virginia class sub, which is Seawolf Light, are quieter at 25 knots submerged than a Los Angeles class is tied up to the pier.
Weird.
Yeah. I mean, any submarine out there, including all the Russian ones, anything above about 5 or 6 knots, we can pick them up. We can detect them. You can't detect a Seawolf at 25 knots. It doesn't make noise. And the thing about
Oh, stop that. Sorry.
that
No, keep going.
we're just taken over by aliens. Yeah.
You know, that well, but if they had lights on it, seems predictably not alien.
Oh, this is true. Yeah, this is true.
But no, the sub. I was going to ask you a question when you're done with that about their actual depth abilities, but keep going.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's just been absolutely fascinating. And people say, well, why you're doing stuff on the Blackbird, you're on the B-2, on the F-117, on the U-2, on the F-22, the F-23, the F-35. Why in the heck are you're messing with submarines? I said, first of all, the general public, all they see is the top 3 or 4 feet of the hull and the sail.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
When a submarine's going to work, you don't know where it's at. You can't see it.
No.
And they're just incredible machines. And the Navy has absolutely no problem with retention when it comes to submarine crews. If you made it through at least one enlistment on a submarine and you enjoyed it, you're going to stay with submarines the rest of your life. And it's a real certain breed of patriot that does that. I mean, you're stuck if you're in Los Angeles class or even a Virginia class, you're in a 33 to 35 foot diameter tube, a steel tube that can be anywhere from 330 feet to 560 feet in length. And you can stay underwater. The limiting factor is food. They can make all the water that you can ever drink. The systems, making fresh water can make 12,000 gallons a day for the submarine. but what gets first priority of the water is the reactor,
Right.
then for human consumption after that. But if one of the systems is down and it's not making, usually there's two systems on the boat. They if for some reason it's down and they don't have enough water, then you may go 10 days or more without being able to take a shower.
Oh,
And they call the guys when they come off patrol, if they've been gone for 70 to 90 days, they call them stinkies when they get off, because the whole boat sort of reeks of.
God, it must smell like the inside of a really well-used catcher's mitt.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
it's gotta
And now they have women on board. I don't know why a woman would want to go on in a steel tube where you can't breathe fresh air for months or weeks weeks or months at a time,
because it's there.
and you have I mean, there's the first submarines to have women on board were the Ohio boats, because they're big enough where they can have separate bilging areas for the women. The first female cruiser would have one mid-grade female officer and 5 junior female officers, and they would be they would be billeted in the same area. There's the officer quarters are six bunks to an area,
Okay.
and so that's that they segregate it, and in the heads. They now have a sign up front, and if you violate it, you are in deep trouble. If a lady's in there taking a shower or whatever, and they have specific times. I'm sure they've worked that out. The women can
Right.
go in there at a certain time, and the guys can go in there the rest of the time. You figure if there's 6 or 9 women on board, there's still another 140 guys on board. So.
It's an interesting future comedy or drama.
Right. And there's no privacy anywhere on a submarine.
No, there wouldn't be. That those books that are out, are they they're available same Amazon
Right.
or
Right. You go to Amazon, you got books by James C. Goodall, and my 5 hardbound books, my Blackbird, my Skunk Works, B2, Los Angeles class, Seawolves,
Yeah.
over here, and eventually it will be the Columbia Nautilus to Columbia class back here, and then when I get the Ohio class book finished, then I'll have 7 of them that are hardbound, and the rest of them are softbound. But I hated putting books together. I hated writing. I didn't want to do anything like that when I was in my youth.
yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll call you tomorrow about sending these books to Norway. Okay.
Well, you know what? We're bringing you live news, general information, editorials, and a personal message board. Cosmic
Yeah.
Neighbors, you're welcome.
Yeah, and I'm on with Ron Mason on Wednesdays. Yeah,
I'm going to be on
next
with him
week.
also.
Yeah, next
I
week.
guess. Next week he invited me on, so
Now,
we'll get a
I'm-
full showing instead of me rushing off.
Now I am in the air. I don't land in Minneapolis until 6 o'clock or 6:30 on Thursday.
Oh well, then.
So it may be just you and Ron. 'Cause
Well,
both,
then.
both my travel days are Thursday, and I didn't even take that in consideration.
Well, we'll move ours around for everyone listening. We were doing this every Thursday. Tonight was a bit later. We thought it would work better. There are a lot of shows on that people like to watch too. So there's a lot of gratitude to all of you that decided to watch live, and definitely a lot of thanks also for those that you watch this in repeat and on YouTube or notaliens.com later. This has been fun tonight.
Yep, yeah, it always is. I mean, Jared and I sort of linked up by accident with Lynn Wallington. Now it's Hartley.
Yeah. I think.
He's from Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota. I wasn't born in Minnesota, but Minnesota's home.
Yeah.
I don't think I would ever move back there unless I was really desperate or ill, and have I told my son, I said, I change your poopy diapers when you're little. You may have to do that to me when I'm okay.
At least a few months from now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully it's never. And in 40 years, in the time that we got left, they actually figure out some cures to things, and we have nanobots for later. So that'll just fix everything. So cellular regeneration, some of those genetic models kick back in. We get new lease on life, hopefully in our lifetimes.
Yeah, yeah. And I just got the word today. I was invited to tour SpaceX.
Oh, today?
In Hawthorne, yeah. And it started out, I was invited directly by Elon Musk, because when his little boy was born, he called him A12. He loved the Oxcart A12 single place CIA Blackbird. So I sent him this book. And it arrived in his office, because I called a buddy of mine at Aviation Week, and I said, how can I guarantee that Elon Musk will get something I send him? He said, send it to attention to such and such. So I did. And as he's walking in his office, Jen, his assistant, is opening the priority mail thing, pulling it out, and he stops. He says, "Is that for me?"
Yeah.
She said, "Yes." He took it. He said, "It's on his desk. It's on his desk today." He said that he absolutely loved the book. He said, "You call Mr. Goodall and you tell him thank you from Elon Musk, and invite him on a tour of the facility."
Wow. Well, you got the call back today on that.
Yep. It's taken forever. COVID sort of screwed things up. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, if you want to wait in the green room, I'm going to get us out of here.
All right. You have a good one, and I will see you next week. And
safe travels.
Yep. Yeah. And I'll talk to you between now and then anyway.
Yeah, I'll be right back with you.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, folks. That was another great show. NotAliens.com, Not Aliens on YouTube, Not Aliens on Rockfin. We're going to do more and more on Rockfin, because you can say whatever you want. And on that note, thanks again for joining us tonight. There is new research. The Peru thing, yes, a coup is serious. And we have some great future expeditionary plans. We're going to move ahead with the research. My book, the new book, should be out. We're squeaking close to Christmas, but it looks like we still might make it. There'll be more on that next week. Everything Imaginable and I will be doing another show. That's Gary and I. And until then, we'll see you soon. Thanks again for joining.